Hello and welcome to another episode of the Backbone Zone. My name is Tyson Jones-Penny, and today on the show we have none other than Josh Cernotta. Josh is a trail building badass who now resides in the Perth Hills in Western Australia. He has his own trail spot with his crew called HVT and has been running a trail jam there for over 10 years. He has done so much for not only the trail community but the Australian BMX community, and to be honest, the worldwide trail community. It was sick to have him on to talk about everything that he's done with the trail spot, how he maintains a trail spot even though he works fly in, fly out, which you'll find out about if you don't know what that is. Huge commitment to work like that, have a child, and also maintain a trail spot. We talk about the trail jams. We talk about his thoughts on BMX and trails and saltiness and all that sort of stuff. I've wanted to have Josh on for a long time. I think that he's a really important part of the BMX scene in Australia, and it was just sick to catch up with him. I haven't spoken to him properly for a few years. So, yeah, awesome to have Josh on. I really hope you enjoy this one. This is super trail heavy, but, yeah, an epic conversation. I think you'll learn a lot. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. All right, Josh Cernotta, thanks for coming on the Backbone Zone, dude. Stoked
No
to
worries,
have
man.
you.
Yeah, super excited to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm psyched to have you over here too. Like I feel like I've been missing the Perth personalities. It's been it's been something that has changed my life going over there. So
Well,
I have you to
to be honest,
thank.
man, since COVID hit, like pre-COVID, it was probably the scenes were getting a bit closer, and then post-COVID, it's been, or, obviously during COVID and then post it, it's been, we'll say slim pickings, for obvious reasons. People only just sort of now get back into the whole traveling and whatnot. And we obviously haven't done anything over here in WA jam-wise or anything since 2020 now. So
Yeah, dude, I got so lucky, like coming over in 2020. Like I would have never thought that it would have been like no more jams. So
yeah.
let's what I might for those that don't know. So you own some land that have some sick jumps, HVT trails, and you've run a jam there, trail jam there for how many years?
Oh, I think we've done 5 jams, and it's funny how the jams grew because I guess the initial thought process behind the jams was actually to just try and get people over, but it was really targeted at like trails riders. I wanted a trails jam for trails riders, I guess, and without all the fanfare and it's a jam sort of thing. I really just was keen on getting a whole bunch of cool trails riders together who that's what they were passionate about, and then ideally having a week of riding, not just a one-day event, but it grew arms and legs like you wouldn't, a hell of a lot more than what we ever expected. And, it became a hell of a lot of work, as I'm sure you appreciate with the Act Jam and all that sort of you've done. But it just became a beast, to try and do it. I think the last one we had, there was 7 bands playing at it, and I mean, admittedly, we didn't pay for them, right? They were all just keen to come up and have a good time. But I guess it grew from being something like, hey, I just want to have fun and ride with a bunch of other trails riders to this is a whole event. And I actually kind of stopped enjoying it a little bit because you're running around flat out trying to make sure everything's running smoothly and there's power to this and that. I mean, bear in mind, it's just my backyard, right? It's not like I haven't got anything special coming in for it. And yeah, I guess it just grew arms and legs, but
yeah, man. Dude, I personally think that jam is the best jam I've ever been, like the best BMX event I've ever been to, like hands down. Yeah, 100%. Like, and yeah, I mean, I know from experience with what you're saying, with you start to feel like you don't like, not that you don't enjoy it, like but it becomes work, like you're like, fuck, I want to. and maybe you're like me, like I think like, oh, I want to make sure that it's like better than last year, or I want to make sure that it's like got this sick thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because I mean, I've gone to three, right? So like, just off my own personal experience, the first one was fucking sick. Um, and then the second one, you had that huge marquee with like bands and shit
If
like
you got
that.
rained
Like,
out, yeah.
yeah, like insane. And then, yeah, the third one was epic again, like that I went to in 2020.
Yeah.
Um,
The cool thing, what I mean, yeah, we've been out of pocket a little bit, I suppose, for some of those things. But again, because it's not a proper organised event or anything, just passing the hat around and everyone chipping in, and some of the regulars that would come here would all put in a bit of coin, and it just became um, I suppose it was just good. Everyone helped out and chipped in financially, I suppose, which was pretty cool. And so for our part, it was let's just get the trails as dialed as we can for it. And of course, each year, hopefully, there's something new and whatever to ride. And it was interesting that last one in 2020. I guess it was the first one that we'd had where there was almost two different spots because HVT's
mm,
kind of split into two now. It was like we'll call it HVT version one, and then up the top's HVT version two. And there's a
yeah,
kind of a story as to how that all developed as well and how we ended up with two. But yeah, the last one was pretty cool. We had some pretty rad people coming across for it. There was a pretty good scene. And I think just the timing of it, just before COVID actually
mm,
hit and everyone went into lockdown, it was kind of like even though we didn't know it at the time, it was kind of that last hurrah before everyone was kind of locked up for a bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the evolution of the trail spot.
So, I guess I guess the property came about because I've always had trails in the old man's backyard when when I was a kid, sort of thing. Or we've had places around. We've all been through it. They've been ploughed. Who knows how many sets of trails we all know that have been on shire or council land or whatever, and then they get ploughed. So I guess I was getting to an age. I started working away. I was looking to buy my first property, and I had every intention of continuing to build and ride trails. So I looked for a set of trails, a property that I could build trails on. Like that was purely the intention, to the point where I didn't care if it had a house on it or not at the time. I was looking for the right block of land, and it was kind of odd because at the time, I had long hair. I was driving this beat up old car. I looked like just a flat out bogan wannabe metal rock star, or so, I don't know what. But I turn up at these properties, and these real estate agents are there. They've either been there, if there is a house on the property, they've opened it up and aired it out, turned all the lights and everything on. And I'd get there and I'd say, oh look, before I go in the house, I'm probably just want to go down and have a look at the property. And I'd pop open the boot of this beat up old Mitsubishi Magna, pull out a pick and a shovel, and I'd go I'd go down and I'd start testing the dirt, like at a water bottle with me. I'd like scratch the grass or whatever I was scratching off the top, make it not look nice and neat so I could replace it. And then I'd dig a hole and I'd test the dirt. And there was a amount of places I went to and I just did it. And I went back, oh, no, the dirt's no good. And they're like, don't you want to see the house first? I'm like, no.
Dude, that
So,
is so good.
yeah. So I guess I found this block and it had everything. It had good dirt that I tested, had a big spring-fed dam. So I knew I had water. It has a house on it, right? I mean, I've kind of semi-lived in this house, but if anyone who's been here, it's pretty shit house. Like it's a horrible old timber and fibro transportable that's falling apart. But at the same time, it provided us with power, so we could plug a fridge in, a toilet that flushed. So we were able to set up pumps to run hoses as opposed to running watering cans, and it made it a hell of a lot easier. But so anyway, I got this property. We started building a set, I suppose, pretty well as soon as I got the property. And I kept it off the side of the road. I guess I wanted to kind of keep it kind of hidden because I didn't know any of the neighbours or anything at the time. And there was already this haunted looking derelict building of a house on there, sort of thing. The last thing I wanted to do was go and, trash the place anymore and start getting complaints. So we started the bottom set, admittedly where the better dirt is as well, but we started the bottom set and had that for probably 6 or 7 years at least before we started the top, maybe even
Mm,
longer. But what happened in that time was we got to know all the neighbours. They were all cool as fuck with it. They'd actually end up coming down and they'd bring an esky or come down and have a bit of a yarn sort of thing. And all my immediate neighbours at least were super supportive of it. So what coincided with that was a couple of the guys did a couple of international trips, went overseas, went over to Posh and Caddy and rode over there and basically just come back. And the bottom set was very, there was some fall to the hill, but it was very much a more of a flat set, so tighter transitions, bowls that you had to pump, and don't get me wrong, they flowed good and everything, but you get the end of the day riding there and you're absolutely pumping your way through the whole lot. And they sort of come back and said, man, we got to start back up the top of the hill, eh? Like these trails over there are so much easier to ride. Like they're bigger, they're a different style sort of thing, but the hill does all the work for you. Which I learned firsthand when I did go over there and went to Posh, and I think on the very first drop in I ever did, I think I nearly landed on the lip of the next jump because I wasn't used to downhill jumps and speed sort of thing. That was a bit of a. But by that point, we'd built a rapport with the neighbours, and they were keen, they were happy with it, sort of thing. So now we're right back up the top using the hill, and unfortunately, the bottom set where we first built that hasn't been touched for years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, to be honest, nobody's ridden there since the 2020 jam.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah,
that is crazy. Yeah,
and it's still there.
Yeah.
I'm actually waiting for some young kids to come along where I can almost just say, hey, here's a set of trails. Like the dirt held up. There's some, even though we haven't tarped them, haven't touched them for years, there's actually sets there that you could ride now just about.
Oh,
like
no
the
shit.
dirt, it's nuts, man. Like the dirt down there, it's like concrete. There's stuff there that you would quite comfortably ride if you could get the run-ins and everything sorted and the bowls sorted. But I'd love to almost just have some young, keen kids and say, hey, here's a spot. And if it's not someone else, it'll be my young fella when he grows up, hopefully, if he's keen on it.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How funny is when you go. I did the same thing at Posh, like rode Fort Wayne, I think it was, and then jumped the first set and just literally like almost landed in the bottom of the next lip. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, like the that downhill fall. Like Russell Brindley had the exact same experience. He came back, and this is before I lived in Canberra, but he came back to Canberra and went to Hush and walked in and was like, boys, we got to change this up, like, and everyone was like, what do you mean change it up, like ready to session? And he's like, nah, like and they knocked it all down. Like there's this crazy story, I'm only telling it the way that I know it from Risp and Russ, but like they came in, like he came home, said trail's no good, they dozed the entire spot themselves and built a new line apparently in 1 week. It was like a 4-jump line, but still, like they built this one line that was a lot bigger. While one of the main trail dudes was away, and then Bentley came back, who was one of the main trail dudes, and was like, "What the fuck?" And they're like, "Chill." Like it was so funny. Like, but yeah, man, it's a crazy experience.
But to be honest, like as much as like, I mean, it's silly when you think about it if you've got the hill not to use it, because I don't reckon as I'm getting older that I could continue riding the bottom set, the steeper, tighter set, like I can now. Like the stuff up the top, they're bigger jumps, right? They're longer, but they're flatter lips, they're smoother. And to be honest, you can ride and you don't get puffed by the end of the line. You can ride there all day. And as you get older and as your back and your knees and everything start to go on you sort of thing, you almost need those jumps that are easier on the body sort of thing. Because that stuff at the bottom, man, that was, when I think about it in hindsight, that was hard work. That was when I was early 20s.
Yeah. I'm actually going back to that. Like I'm building a spot in my where I'm living, and it's super flat, but at the moment, because I just moved here, I haven't really spent a lot of time looking for a spot, and I don't really want to, because I don't know the area. Like I'm really worried about like finding this spot, being like, yeah, this is sick, getting 6 months in and then just getting a dose, because like turns out it's like farmer's freaking property or something.
Yeah.
So I'm building on in my in-laws' backyard, but it's like mad flat, and I'm a little bit like, it's definitely going to be a change to go back to that like tight, smaller, tighter transition and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny, man. Yeah, with the jams, let's talk a little bit more about that, like about the
yeah,
actual jams themselves. Um, I mean, you've had dudes from all over. Like,
yeah. Man, it's kind of like I said, it grew arms and legs, and it kind of yeah, you're right. We've had people from all over. Some of that's just been pure chance, right? That they're traveling through. Some of it's been kind of tailored around when they're going to be in town, but there's also plenty of people, particularly from Europe, and even some from I suppose over in the US that timed it to be over here for the jam sort of thing,
mm,
which blew us away. You know, like I mean, it kind of all just worked out, but the fact that there were people on the other side of the world who were making their plans to travel not only to Australia but to Perth to align with a jam. I mean that it's not something I ever expected, but
mm.
it's pretty humbling at the same time. You kind of go, oh, maybe we have got something good going on here. You know, like
Oh man,
we're we're
it's
we're, we're from like Perth is the most isolated capital city in the world, so
yeah,
we don't get. I mean, you look at Australia. I can understand, and I fully understand why if people come to Australia, they go to the East Coast because everything's on the East Coast, and then way over, like 3,500 kilometers away, you've got Perth.
mm, yeah. I think it's so funny how um, people from the US don't realize the actual size of Australia. Like it's like Perth is fucking far away, man, from
But
the East Coast.
when you tell people that look, Australia is more or less it's the same distance from one side to the other in terms of east to west. It's not that much difference, sort
Mm,
of thing.
yeah, that's right.
So,
Yeah,
but you're talking about a population of 30 million versus a population of 300 million, and there's nothing in the middle of
yeah,
not
yeah,
really anything in the middle of Australia, sort of thing.
yeah,
You're right, it does blow people away a little bit.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, the it just like to I guess I don't know blow smoke up your ass or whatever, but just to continue on with the whole jam thing. Like I always think about the jams just because it was a it was when I go to when I went to the HVT jams like that and see that you've obviously built some sick jumps, but then you were also thinking about like this experience, like whether you thought about it like that or not, like it felt like
Yeah.
yeah, this fucking week long festival of trails, dude.
Yeah.
It's no wonder it grew arms and legs because I mean like you get to go there and I don't know how many people were actually there, but it felt like there was quite a lot like on those main
Yeah.
nights. But even to just say have 100 people that were there like basically all week, like
Yeah.
that's a
I think
crazy vibe, you know. Very
yeah,
hard to
I think
replicate.
yeah, you're right. And I think the property kind of sets itself up for it because people just come in and they pitch tents and like there's room to spread out sort of thing and actually base themselves. You know,
Mm.
it's not like, oh hey, I'm gonna go stay in a hotel and then I'll go there for the day, but I've got to get back to the hotel. It's like anyone who comes and is keen, they come and they roll out a swag or they set up a tent or they're sleeping in the back of their car sort of thing. So you're right, everyone's there. And I've always said like the jam might be on the Saturday or whatever, but really it's a week before and it's a week after and just come
Yeah.
and have fun. And I'll be honest, man, the best sessions that I ever had there was actually probably the week leading into it or the week
Mm.
after when there was less it was more just the people who wanted to ride and have a good time sort of thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's what made it really cool, I reckon. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and did you have many like cuz when I was there was quite a few like Perth OGs or at least people that I would be pointed to. As I thought that Seb Scott did like a sick job of like celebrating the WA BMX history. You know, he'd be like,
yeah,
that's bloody blah 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 from over there, and oh that spot over. Um,
yeah. We've got some characters,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and I mean, I also kind of like that. I suppose all those jams, and I guess kind of what I always wanted the property to be about was like just not a celebration of trails in WA, but an opportunity to bring everyone back together as well.
Mm.
It's I know we spoke pre starting this recording about the history of sort of WA trails and all the rest of it, and where it sort of come from, and um, yeah, the good thing about those jams is even people who don't ride it anymore, or were the people that I looked up to as a young tacker, sort of coming through and first learning to properly ride trails and everything, they would come up and have an absolute blast, even if they weren't riding. It was just bringing them back to their roots and where it all started,
Mm.
and probably on a slightly bigger scale than what we ever had in the past. But yeah, it was awesome for that, and I probably got as much enjoyment out of the fact that I was one of the young tacker grommets, whatever you want to, sprocket rocket riders sort of thing that was probably annoying to all of these older dudes back in the day. And now they're actually coming and having a good time and coming to me and saying, man, it's so good. I remember when you were like, trying to jump this, or you were so
Yeah.
young, So it's cool to bring that side of things back. You're right, the OG
Mm.
riders time and everything's cool. So
Man, because from the outside looking in, like I was growing up. How old are you? You must be
36.
36.
Nearly
Yeah. So
37 in March. Yeah.
yeah, cool. Yeah. So we're very similar in age, but
Yeah.
like from an outside perspective, I grew up obviously buying magazines like BMX Press,
Yeah.
2020, obviously, but BMX Press especially had a lot of like WA trail
Yeah.
stuff in it, and I was a dude that grew up without a skate park, so like I actually have a hard time calling trails just because I spent so many years just building jumps. It was almost
Yeah.
like I didn't know. It was like me and a couple of other dudes building jumps. Like
Yeah.
I didn't have like much. We didn't have like a trail scene or anything like that where I was from. But one of the things that I saw was just this like a bunch of badasses in WA building trails. Did you have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get to be a part of much of that growing up?
Yeah, so I mean, me personally, right? So I was born out in the goldfields, right, in small mining towns. So the first, I mean, I was only very young, but I was born in a town called Laverton, which probably had a couple hundred people in it at most, and then moved to Kambalda, Kalgoorlie, Norseman, if anyone wants to look any of them up. Other than Kalgoorlie, which has probably got a population of about 30,000, all these other ones were just small little mining towns,
Mm.
and I was quite fortunate. My old man got me and my brothers into BMX racing. He actually built a lot of the tracks and
Oh,
was
crazy!
president of the track. Yeah, like I guess
Wow.
it was a way for us. We got at the time 3 young boys, and we all needed to burn off some energy. Particularly my older brother, who was a I hope he's not listening to this, but he was a pretty good rider. When he would ride more consistently. um, but I mean that's where BMX started, right? So I think I was 3 when I raced my first BMX race, and we were heavy in the BMX racing scene. So even though the old man was working on mine sites and fly out and whatever, we still had a really really positive upbringing in BMX, I suppose. And whether it was my dad or my mum, they were the ones taking us to race events and everything. And we obviously took a bit of a shining to it, and we all of a sudden we were doing the state rounds and the state competitions, and then it was nationals, and then it was worlds when it was in, when it was in Australia anyway. Back in '98, we raced the worlds over in Melbourne. So we kind of always had that racing background, and then growing up in small towns, probably very similar to you, we had no skate park either. I don't remember there being a skate park in the town I lived in probably until I moved to Perth pretty well, which was high school or
Yeah, yeah,
thereabouts.
yeah.
So yeah, building jumps is what we always did in the bush or in the backyard or whatever. And right from when I can remember building little jumps, and it was almost like the whole wooden plank against a couple of bricks and see how far you can jump, in the back alleyway of a tiny little town in the middle of Western Australia to sort of trying to build something a little bit more proper in the bush. But
Yeah.
we when we moved to Perth, it just so happened we moved up into the hills of Perth, we'll call it, which we didn't know it at the time. But if you're going to talk about a trails mecca of Perth, that's where it all was. Like we moved into just the ideal spot because we kind of looked at a map and said, hey, we don't want to live we're not beach guys, right? We haven't grown up near the beach, so that's not us. We want some land where we can ride our BMX bikes and motorbikes and do our country kid stuff. So
Mm.
moved up here, and it just so happened, like when we moved in, probably in 2000, and probably through to about 2005 or six, there would have been, you think, there would have been at least 5 proper what I would consider proper trails spots, um, in the space of about a 25-minute drive of each other.
Holy shit!
Like
Yeah, right.
it was just this wicked spot, and at the time, that's where the entire Perth, I wouldn't say trail scene, I'll say riding scene at the time, because I'd say back then you didn't really have street riders and park riders and trails riders. You just had BMX riders.
Mm.
So that's where everyone would congregate. You'd come up there and you could ride your bike from one spot to the other. And of course, I was only young. I was 12-ish at the time, sort of thing. Um, but man, it was wicked. And then we had this other place, a town about 2 hours south of Perth called Collie. Um, Collie was, again, I don't know what their population would have been, 10,000, maybe 20,000 at the most. And over the years, they've had three absolute legitimate proper trail spots in this tiny little town. And it's funny because you might have, I don't know if anyone sees you, it's almost taken a bit of a revitalisation, the Collie trail scene, and there's one place called Pipeline in particular. And it's funny because you might have seen like Pikes on Pushies on Instagram. If you follow them, like they're these young racing kids that have sort of really taken to the trail scene, and it's kind of driven by a dude named Ben Coffey, who, well, I suppose, definitely a West Australian OG rider, an amazing street rider, but
Oh, really?
also an amazing trails rider. Man, if you look, so one of the first BMX videos that ever came out, Graham Scott did, called "How Hard Is It?" If you just Vimeo or whatever it is, Ben Coffey on "How Hard Is It?" and you'll see some stuff that, to be honest, is still pretty up there these days, and
Oh,
that come
no
out
shit.
in early 2000s sort of thing. Yeah. So, but he's also a trails dude like you wouldn't believe, and even though now he's older than me, he's kind of been driving this revitalization of the Collie trail scene, and now everyone's cruising down there and having a good time. So yeah, trails back then, I'm going to say early 2000s through to about maybe 2008, 9 sort of thing was awesome in WA. It
Yeah,
was such a
right.
cool thing, and there was no divide between trails riders and street riders. I mean, even I used to go and ride street, in the early part of the day or on the Saturday, but then the Sunday would be trails. And so everyone would just congregate. I mean, that's some big names. Like, when I say big names, I'm big names from WA, but there was dudes that now considered pretty epic street riders and everything, who were kind of a part of that scene in the early days as well. Kelvin Kosovich, who's over in the US, does a lot of filming and stuff over there and rides for Kink. He was part of that scene towards the back end of it.
Oh, wow.
Alan Stibbard, he used to come up and ride trails a fair bit with us. These are guys that are pretty, well, I consider them pretty well known
Oh, yeah,
now,
for
and
sure.
they're a part of that scene. So
Wow, that's sick. What?
yeah, and then sorry, go on.
No, you go. Keep going.
I was going to say, and then the scene kind of, I wouldn't say it died out, but there was just less of it, around. I mean, I started HVT in 2010 was when I bought the property and started building there, and then it kind of petered right off, and there wasn't a lot of trails. There's the odd spot and jumps that popped up around the place, but nothing really too serious. And the scene kind of divided, and you had your guys that were dedicated street riders, and I mean, props to them. They do stuff that I would never even dream of doing, sort of thing. And to the same respect, I'd stayed up in the hills and became lazy and wouldn't go down the hill to go and ride street and stuff like that. I was more than happy just to stay up there and dig some jumps and then go and ride, sort of thing. That was our sort of scene, and that's where the divide sort of started, I guess. And not like a bad vibes divide, just when people started to go down their own pathway, sort of thing.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it definitely seemed like there's some heavy hitters from Perth. I mean, some of them that are, worldwide names, like Calvin and Callan, I think are like pretty well known, like across the world, absolute savages. But I mean, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but even your brother, you know what I mean? Like he was a freak. Or I mean, last time I saw him ride, he's still freakishly good. I didn't actually realize that because Ben ordered some stuff from us just recently, but I follow him on Instagram and he's always like, putting some magic up on the ground with the shovel and stuff like that. It's sick.
Yeah.
Who are some other dudes that maybe people don't know as like worldwide names, but were like legit?
I mean, in the trail scene, I suppose it's kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit, and there's been a few places on private property as well. So,
Sure.
I mean, there was some dudes when I was very young, Ben and Simon Higgs, some brothers that had some trails in Mundaring that were that used to be one of the main places.
Yeah, right.
Amiel had some trails in his backyard that again were super cool sort of thing. That we used to go and ride again. Probably names that you haven't heard of before, sort of thing. Probably the one spot that sticks out the most is Martin Road, which was in BMX Press a few times. I think it was even referred to as Secret Spot X
Oh
for
wow.
some reason in that. But the dude named Trent, he was definitely the main character there, sort of thing. You know, you almost guarantee if you went to that spot, his yellow, you know, car would be parked up, ute would be parked up there, and he'd be digging, sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
Like these are the guys. And then I don't know, you always had some really really good riders. There's a dude named Jamo or Daniel Jamison,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
I
Yes.
still would say is probably one of the better riders that I've ever come across, and he's across all street, park, trail, sort of thing. Like,
Dude, I remember
um,
seeing a photo of him doing a one-handed table at your trails, and it's the fucking sickest photo. I'll have to try
it's
and
not,
find it.
yeah.
But
It's still one of my favorite photos, I reckon, on at the trail sort of thing and ever, because it's textbook, right? It's
yeah,
like that
yeah,
It's almost like the Vic Murphy one-footed table that everyone knows, something off the curb or off that bit of concrete.
yeah,
Like,
that's right.
it's just,
Yeah,
yeah, I love that one. Yeah,
yeah, for sure. I remember seeing, is it Jono Lucas?
yeah,
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 or the clubhouse trails. That's what just I just remember seeing that. We actually see. I've had a couple of orders from dudes that have like clubhouse trails as their email, like something something like
yeah,
that in their email, and
yeah.
it's like, damn, this dude must be legit.
The CHL crew, Clubhouse Locals,
Yeah.
they were a pretty badass crew, and they were part of that whole early trail scene, Martin Road and
Okay.
you know, Ben Higgs, in that sort of era, I guess. And
Sure.
we used to have an indoor park here in Perth called Vertigo, and they were very much based around that sort of thing. And yeah, they were some pretty gnarly dudes. Like they were, I mean, when I say gnarly dudes, they're all good blokes. But I was very young, right? I was
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
I was the young dude sort of thing, and to a degree, that kind of I don't know. I think we're kind of nice, especially to kids and stuff that come through. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
very much like you kind of like drop in or go away sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Dude,
was
I
a
think that
different.
was just the time, man. I think that was just like,
Yeah, yeah,
and sometimes I wonder if we're doing the right thing, being nice or not. Like I think you kind of learn from what you had it growing up. Like
yeah, yeah.
it's
I,
interesting.
I it is, man. I mean, I kind of think of it in two ways, right? Like, so my feeling is that kids these days have far too much handed to them in
Mm,
terms of like you're the same, right? You come from a place with no skate park or anything, so you had to build your own fun, right? And that's probably why trails was stronger and more prevalent, is because you would have to build your own fun. You know, there was no skate park to go and ride or whatever. Kids these days, especially in Perth, man, there is concrete parks. There are these start off as pump tracks. Now they're actual proper bike parks with proper jumps and everything like that. They're everywhere. Like,
I know.
what would motivate a kid these days to go and spend all winter building jumps in the bush when
Mm,
they can just wait for a patch of blue sky and then go and ride something that's handed to them on a plate, no maintenance, no watering, no tarping up at the end, sort of thing.
yeah.
Like, it's kind of, I can understand why kids don't get into it these days, but there's a few of us here, and I mean we've got, I'd say, a fairly old trail scene now. Like we're all, there'd be no one sub 30
Yeah. Yeah.
that's regular,
Yeah.
like, definitely bugger all, if any, teens coming through, that it's kind of like, man, once, if we stop, there's not really that much of a
Mm,
young crew coming through, which is kind of what leads me to, hey, I want to give the kids, this bottom set if something ever popped up, and it really, geez, I know I'll just talk flat out, man. Sorry, but
nah. Nah. Oh, dude, keep going.
I know it kind of when I went over to Bosch and Caddy, and they had like a lot of these little lines and stuff there, and talking to some of the older dudes, like talking to J Bone and that, they even talked about the same thing that we're going through and have been going through, where they just built stuff for themselves, and then there wasn't stuff for the young kids. Like everything at HVT is not beginner stuff.
No, that's right.
So how does someone an entry level come in? So they built all this small stuff, starts off with pump tracks and all the rest of it. And that's kind of the way we're going now. I'd say the next couple of years it'll be smaller stuff to try and get people that progression
Hmm.
to come through. We even built HVT to a point where even some of the people that would ride at the bottom won't ride at the top because straight away they're intimidated by them. And so it's kind of our own fault in some ways. Um,
Yeah,
but
it's an interesting thing. I talked to you about this for forever. Like
yeah,
you you kind of do. You need to be able to have something so that the kids can aspire to get into the same spot. Like let's just say HVT, for example.
mm,
Like yeah, if all you've got is one line that's only got like 20-foot sets in it, like that's going to be impossible for them to get to. And I also think that it's just a fact now that kids get stuff handed to them. You know what I mean? It's almost like saying, it's almost like being like, oh, when we grew up, we all knew how to ride horses and fucking build a house
yeah,
with our bare hands. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, I get that was a really sick time in history, but you can't expect people to go back to that time. We live in the modern age where, especially in Perth, seems like there's a fucking sickest set of like public, jumps that don't even need to be like watered because they're all like surfaced and shit like that.
yeah,
And that's just the facts of life for a BMX
yeah,
rider now, So you do need to figure out a way to get them into seeing that they have this ability to like
yeah.
do more than that, which is what you guys are. Like a trail scene is
Yeah.
sick when you can.
Man,
You go.
I reckon like I've not been to many of these places, right? Like I'm pretty lazy to be honest, but when I when I have been to some of these places and I watch some of these kids drop in, I'm like, dude, where did you learn to ride trails? Like you've got style, you've got boost, like you've got the bike that's built up for trails and all the rest of it, like the you see what they're wearing or whatever, like it's all trails related. But I'm
Mm,
like, there's no trails around here, and there's if there was a spot, you'd hear about it eventually. But you're kind of like, how did you develop into this trails rider? Yet you've probably never ridden a proper set of trails,
yeah, yeah,
a real set of trails, should I say?
for
So
sure. Yeah, yeah. It's a funny one. Like I grapple with it a lot. Like say for example, the spot that I got built that you've seen for Act Jam last year, big sets of jumps, and for
yeah,
one, they got built, and I wanted to have like the boys, Rain, and even Brazil helps build them, but you know they were meant to be pro level, elite level jumps, so they've got like big sets in them, and but they were there publicly, and I was freaking out that kids would fucking kill themselves riding it, but they don't. In fact, they
yeah,
ride them no worries. But now it's like just one more place that's like, oh, here you go. You don't have
yeah,
to build this. And it's
yeah.
sad because,
Look,
I moved over here and up to Bundaberg, and the boys are saying that no one's really taking care of it like you thought that it would be.
yeah,
And it's just like one of those things, like you don't know how to beat that. I've always kind of said like that the best riders in the world come from towns that don't have skate parks. Like look at Mount White or somewhere like that. Like
yeah,
man, it's just you are forced into digging jumps, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
that's where the best riders come
I
from.
mean, at the end of the day, as long as kids are stoked on BMX, I'm happy, sort of thing, and
Yeah,
it's yeah, good on them, sort of thing. And I mean, I'll keep HVT running for as long as I can. And now I've got a young fella. He's only 3 or just about 3, but like hopefully if he chooses to, he takes it up and is keen, sort of thing, and it can be something we can sort of pass on. But
mm,
I've got a couple other mates that have got young kids and stuff as well. Like I literally last weekend started a pump track here, and it's just because he got one of my best mates, his young fella and my young fella are cruising around on their balance bikes, and they're trying to ride the trails or the bowls of the jumps, I suppose. And I'm like, man, I think it's time, hey. We need to build them something they can actually start to get a feel for, sort of
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah, yeah.
that'll be this afternoon's job. I'll go up there and I'll keep working on that and try and get some runs
Sick.
this summer.
Dude, it's a big trip out, hey, when your son or daughter, I guess, goes and starts taking an interest in that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
man,
that's cool.
it's a trip. With I mean, yeah, like you said, you were kind of growing up in this era of like epic WA BMX scene,
Yeah,
and do you feel like, but you had, so you've got two brothers? Is that what you're saying? Have I met you
yeah, I got
younger?
two. So Mike is the older one,
Yeah,
right? So and then I've got a younger brother Ben as well. So the
Ben.
three of us used to race together. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So Ben never continued on with BMX, I suppose, after we stopped the racing side of things. But
Yeah,
and I mean, he was probably just a tad too young to sort of at the time anyway to sort of tag on with me and Mike, and then we did our trip. So when I finished high school, Mike and I went overseas and we travelled for 7 months, I think it was.
yeah,
Like we
right.
did basically 3 months in Europe, 3.5 months in the US. That's where Mikey got picked up by Solid at the time and was riding for them, and then come back over the East Coast briefly before coming back to Perth. So we literally, man, that was an interesting trip. We literally left with our bikes and our backpacks.
Wow.
Um, for 7 months, we didn't pay for accommodation once.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was,
Wow.
I mean, admittedly, like, so you're talking about a 17, or sorry, an 18-year-old and a 19 or 20-year-old at the time, Mikey was. We slept wherever, man. Parks, alleyways, the beach, like couch surfed. It was almost like you'd meet up if you were lucky enough to um, find someone at a pub or something to go home with. It was good to go and have a shower. Yeah, we did that. But to be honest, it's also one of the things that I love about BMX is the scene is pretty tight, right? Like
Mm.
you've got. I'm now at a point. I reckon you could near on drop me anywhere in Europe or probably the US, and within a few phone calls, I could probably find someone who knows someone who can hook us up with a place to stay or a set of trails to ride, sort of thing. And it's the same deal. It's the same deal with here. The people that have travelled through and come to HVT over the years um, now just call us up or just say, hey, just tell Josh or Glenn, who's obviously the other main dude here, just tell them that you know me, and when they come here, we welcome them with open arms. Classic example, right? We've got this dude here at the moment, Hugo, who I don't know if you met him,
Oh,
but
yeah, from France.
yeah,
Yeah, he's a really
that's
nice
it.
dude.
Yeah, so Hugo's here, man. He's basically local number 3 at the moment. So he's his second digging season, and he's settling in here in Perth, which is absolutely awesome. So he was more or less linked up to us through another dude from France named JB, who was probably one of, if not the first international group to ever come to HVT
Yeah,
back in
yeah.
like 2015. He like more or less schooled us, and I mean he's still building trails and stuff as far as I know over there. But he more or less schooled us on how to dig trails. Put it this way, he was that keen to build trails. They brought their own shovel heads from France because they liked using particular style of shovel.
Wow.
Yeah. And so like 15 years later, we've got, 14 and a half years later, we've got another dude from France here
Crazy.
who was a link from that, which I just love about the scene,
Dude,
right?
that's
Like,
sick. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I suppose that's the other thing with us here in Perth is if there's people who are keen to come over, we're going to open them with open arms. Like,
Mm.
man, we're stoked to have anyone come through and either lend a hand or ride or whatever, like.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's sick. When you went on your Europe, your big trip, so you
Yeah.
obviously would have gone like heaps of trail spots.
Yeah, we did. We went to a few.
Different time though, I guess. Well, how long ago was that? You said you were 17. Like,
Went to 2006.
yeah.
So, we went to, what did we do? So we did the BMX Masters. We did the Rebel Jam in Germany. We
Oh,
spent a
cool.
bit of time at Decoy. So we'd met, or Mikey had done a trip previously and had met like Kai 40 and
Mm.
the 40 ones. So when we went back, we actually went down and stayed in Newton Abbot, or down at the bottom end of England there, sort of thing. And we rode decoy for a while there, sort of thing. So we still keep in touch with Toby and her sister Amber as well. So she's riding to a wingsuit flying for. I think she might even do it professionally. I'm pretty sure. But anyway,
Wow.
we stayed with them. Yeah, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there was a fair bit of trails, and then when we went over to the US, what did we do over there? Geez, we spent a fair bit of time in like the Northwest, so Seattle, and
Oh, crazy.
yeah, there was definitely Salem. Um, yeah, there was some fucking good spots over there, absolutely. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, it was in an era where we were riding not only trails but parks and street and whatever at the same time. We
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
really at that point dedicated trails
Yeah.
dudes, I guess you could say. So, but
Yeah.
man, yeah, it was an experience and a half that was, and then doing a solid trip that was on props and getting being a part of all that. It was a hell of an experience.
Yeah, that's cool. It's funny how like yeah, back in the day there was a bit more. Maybe just because we're all a bit younger, like there was a bit more doing everything. Like
Yeah,
I don't really find myself. I ride the parks here since I moved just because I'm kind of forced to at the moment. I don't have a set of trails. I'm trying to build it, but fucking hell, it's
yeah,
slower, slower than I remember in my 20s when I had fuck all else to do.
yeah.
But you know the yeah, it's funny. Like as you get older, you start to hone in what you really like to do. It's like what you were saying, where you weren't going to these bike parks and stuff like that. It's like you
Yeah.
kind of just find yourself going to the trails. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, for me personally, like, so I work FIFO, fly in, fly out on a mine sites. I have done for 17, nearly 18 years. I've been working
Wow.
flying, fly out now. So, like every week, I'm on a plane flying 2,000 kilometers north to work for a week or 2 weeks and then come back. So, my roster now is I actually fly out every Monday morning at 5 a.m. and I come home every Thursday night.
Wow.
Um, I'm home every weekend, so really I'm home Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I fly back out again. So like I've only got 3 days at home.
Mm,
I've got a wife and a kid that I've
that's
got to
right.
spend.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll be honest, man. From a selfish point of view, having the trails at the same property that I live at is just a blessing in disguise. I don't have to make an effort to go anywhere. I don't have to worry about planning anything. It's like the regular boys, and there's not that many of us, but the regular boys just they come up and they might be over there digging and riding, and I don't even know about it.
Mm,
It's because it's fairly well separated on the property now,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, which is cool. So yeah, for me it'd be an effort for me to plan to go out and go and ride a skate park that's an hour away or a set
Yeah.
of jump.
How do you find that? Like, just on a personal level, like fly out for a long time. Yeah, that'd be. I mean, you're
I
probably
guess
used
it's
to it.
all
It's just your
yeah,
life.
it's all I've ever done.
Yeah,
Right, the
yeah.
only work I've ever done, like I've basically left high school. I didn't go and do a trade, or I didn't go to university. I went and drove dump trucks.
Yeah,
Like
wow.
and progressed through the machines, the dozers and excavators and everything. So I suppose my trade is an operator, if you wanted to call it that. And then sort of moved into the leadership roles and management sort of roles now. So I've got some qualifications and stuff now that are, I guess, equivalent of going to a university or a I've got a couple of diplomas and bits and pieces like that. But it's all I've ever known, to be
Mm,
honest. And I like the lifestyle because it's all I know. Like I like the fact I've got, I used to have a week off at a time sort of thing. So I might go to work for a week or 2 weeks, but then I'd have a full week off.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it works well for me. Yeah, I don't know
yeah,
how I'd go with a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. Like
yeah.
9 to 5 job almost makes me think I need to take up a second job because it's a short work day instead of it's
Yeah,
so much
yeah.
longer.
Yeah, so like with when you're doing that type of work, because I don't know anything about it. Like obviously, only a BMX shop and working here since I was pretty much 18. Like I haven't really known
Yeah,
much else either. But yeah, like are you working like all day? Like, what's the story?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, like so most mine sites. So for those that don't know, Western Australia is very very mineral rich. So there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of mine sites of various sizes. So gold, iron ore, lithium, diamonds. There's all sorts of stuff. Nickel, all in Western Australia. So that's what Perth exists for. To be honest, like that by
Mm,
far, Perth is the hub for all of these major mining companies and stuff. And um, pretty much stock standard on every one of those is it's a 24/7 operation, 365 days a year. It's 12-hour shifts. So as a general rule of thumb, everything will start at 6 a.m., finish at 6 p.m., and then the night shift crew will start at 6 p.m., finish at 6 a.m. That's a pretty standard sort of thing. And then if you're in like a supervision or a leadership role, you're obviously there a bit earlier and staying back a bit later to tidy
Wow.
things up. So basically say it's a 13-hour day guaranteed, sometimes longer. But again, that's all I've ever known. And when you're on a mine site, right, like it's not like you're knocking off work to go and catch up with your mates or anything. You're isolated in the middle of nowhere, and they're comfortable camps, right? Like you've got good food, you got a wet mess or a bar that you can go and have a couple of beers at, sort of thing. But that's limited these days. Pretty well every site is you're limited to 4 mid-strength beers a night. So it's not really any risk of being hungover the next day and going into work. There's still a few that aren't like that, but I'd say that 90% of that's what the industry's like at the moment. So, but yeah, I don't know. That's just all I've ever known.
Yeah,
It's
wow.
it's 13-hour days minimum, then come home and you get your time off. So for most people, they've got like a back-to-back. So when they're off, there's somebody else who's there doing that job for them, and then you just basically swap roles.
Hmm.
In my position, I don't have a back to back, so that's why my roster's a little bit different. I'll come home. I've only got the 3 days off, and those 3 days off aren't really days off. They're since we've been sitting here, the phone's rung 3 times from work,
Oh,
from people. So you're
yeah,
sort of
wow.
always on call to help answer questions and everything, which is fine. That's a part of the role, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow, man. Yeah, it's definitely a commitment, like a big commitment. That's crazy, dude.
yeah.
How does that work with, yeah, having how's your son now? 3.
It'll be 3 in December. Yeah,
Oh, wow,
yeah.
cool. And so is Asha just at home and looking after?
So she works full time as well. So
Oh, wow.
she's a manager of a mining maintenance company,
Oh, that's
or
right.
a
Yeah,
division of that. Yeah, yeah. So she's full time. So the young fella Zeppelin, he's at daycare 5 days a week.
yeah, yeah,
Um, we she works a full day every day, sort of thing, and balance that out. But
yeah.
that's not so bad. You sort of getting towards more school age where that's going to be the case. But
Mm, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's really interesting, man. It's impressive just from, I mean, you hear about people that are doing stints in the mines and stuff like that. Obviously having like this spare time, not spare time, but you know what I mean. Their time off, then they go and dig trails for like a week or however many days. But when you think about the reality of you're working pretty hardcore, like your waking hours are spent working, it's pretty impressive that people like
yeah.
yourself, like you're maintaining a trail spot when you don't really have that much spare time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's two parts to that. Well, I suppose one part is that they're on private property, so yeah, not much changes. And don't get me wrong, the progress of HVT is probably not at the same level as some other spots where you've got people ducking in on weekdays and a bigger crew sort of thing. Like, so there's that. But I don't know, man. I need a release. Like and BMX riding has always been my release and my time to switch off from all of that because
Yeah,
I've got a horrible habit of just being too focused on what's going on. I can't sit still, so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
always good to have something else
for sure, man.
sort
Yeah,
of
it's
work.
funny. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's interesting how trail building is like some people meditate and shit like that. I actually really like trail
Yeah,
building. I actually really like it by myself. Like, that sounds really like selfish
yeah.
because I like hanging out with my mates too. Don't get me wrong, but there's something not really nice about being
Man,
alone in your
I
thoughts.
I almost yeah, I almost this might sound funny. I almost like building trails more than I like riding them.
Yeah,
And so sometimes, like, you don't really get frustrated building trails, but you can definitely get frustrated riding trails. Like, I enjoy the whole process, and here Perth's really lucky with weather. We kind of our riding season now seems to be, we'll say, November through till May, so it's a pretty long season we can ride in. And then that period in the middle there, where when the winter hits and we get the rains, I actually love that part. Sometimes you get halfway through the riding season, you're like, man, I just want it to rain because I want to
mm,
add section on, or I want to build the next bit. So
yeah, yeah, dude.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then and I mean, it just changes. I mean, back to the whole work thing. I suppose my attitude on riding and everything has changed over the years. And I mean, it kind of goes back to you look at, I mean, your last guest, Logan Martin, for example, right? Like he's one of those people that's kind of brought BMX into the limelight a bit more, and it's a bit more mainstream. Whereas for years, right, like I was working in professional capacity, I suppose, as a manager, dealing with some very high level people who earn bulk money and make massive decisions. And then on the weekend, I'd be riding little kids' bikes and building jumps. And I used to keep that to myself, right? I wouldn't advertise that, because as soon as you tell someone that is, professional, if you're looking to advance your career, you say, oh yeah, I also ride BMX bikes on break, people would look at you and go like, geez, grow up, kid. Like,
Yeah.
but now it's in the Olympics, and it's a bit more mainstream. It's kind of, I mean, I actually don't care now. It's probably more I'm just getting old and don't really care what people think. But I don't mind saying that now, and it doesn't have the same sort of connotations that it used to.
Mm.
I guess I've often said this. It's kind of BMX to me. Sorry, trails riding to me, I always liken to surfing. Like if you come across a 50-year-old surfer, you wouldn't blink an eyelid, right? You'd be like, oh, that's sweet. You're out there, sort of thing, and probably a 50-year-old surfer's out there having an absolute ball. They're not doing all the fancy tricks and flips and spins or whatever the tricks are called on waves and all the rest. They're not doing all that hardcore stuff, but they're out there just flowing, having a good time. It's all about just being smooth and everything. And to me, that's what trails riding is like. It's the equivalent of surfing. It's big, flowy, just doing your own thing. Fortunately, you don't have to do tricks, because I can't really do tricks. You can just sort of ride and have a good time, and that's how I've always sort of split it. And when we talked about traveling for BMX, I've always kind of said you wouldn't blink an eyelid at someone who went to ride to go and surf a certain surf break somewhere and go on a holiday to go and surf that particular wave, much like we will travel to go and ride a set of trails. It's very much the same sort of thought process, at least in my head anyway.
Oh man, in my head too. Like I actually put that out publicly, where I said that trails, I think, is the most revered form of BMX. I don't know if it's the most revered, but I certainly think that it shows other people. Well, maybe it doesn't show other people, but it definitely, exactly like what you said. Like trails is just this thing that can be your entire lifespan. You know what I mean? Like it's like what you said. You literally don't have to do one trick, and that's a part of where I actually had someone say like how do you not? I think he asked me. This is actually a couple of years ago, and for some reason it stuck in my head. But I said, "Oh, I used to be able to do that trick," and he was like, "Why? Why did you used to be able to do it?" And I'm like, "Well, one, that's an interesting question, and two, it's like I just don't care to do it anymore. Like I really only care to do a few tricks, and I think it's just because of that feeling that you're actually just trying to chase the wave, but the wave is just riding trails. Like it's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's so many for people out there that like don't know how good trail riding can feel. Like, man, they got to get on it.
And I mean, I full respect to the people that can do all these fancy tricks, but to me, that wouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like trying to huck myself and do a 1080 or a triple tail whip or all that. Like it's aerial gymnastics in some way. Like it seems like a lot of work. And again, that's not the way that I'm wired or I'm driven to. I'm happy just to ride and flow, sort of thing. I'm not interested in being the best or anything. I've got probably about 3 tricks in my bag, and I don't think I have to take a limb off for any of them. So.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's so funny, that feeling of needing to do less. Like I think it just comes with. I don't know if it's just getting older because I actually don't think it's got anything to do with like being more scared or anything like that. I actually just think that you refine what it is that you enjoy the most.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when I don't know, like maybe it sounds lame or something, like, but when you're younger and you want to go on, like, say you want to go out to a club or whatever or something like that, and you want to eat the fancy food and you want to go to the crazy place that has all the crazy experiences and
Yeah.
like amusement park vibe where there's like bright lights and all this
Yeah.
fancy shit. But then as you refine your experiences down, then it kind of takes less for you to be like more happy,
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And these days, like I'm not even trying to really do kickouts and stuff as much because the feeling of catching the top of the landing is enough for me nowadays.
Absolutely. And like I know I mentioned it before, but like, I love watching someone like J-Bone ride, for example, right? He's not going upside down. He's not trying to do all these fancy tricks, but everyone still would look at him and say one of the better trails riders or the cooler people to watch, sort of thing. And he's not even going the highest.
Mm.
At the same time, in the same breath, right? I absolutely respect the hell out of the people that can do all of that stuff. Like
Oh
to me, I'm
yeah.
just, oh, man, never in a pink fit would I even attempt that. Like that is impressive what these
Yeah.
people are doing. Like
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
live in
and
that impressive role too, like in that world of like, holy shit, that was impressive,
yeah,
but I
and
also
even
just, yeah.
you probably, I assume you're probably in the same boat. But even like trails riders, like the ones we talk about nowadays, they've just found a way to not only do some pretty amazing things, but make it look amazing at double the height to probably what I'll ever do as well. Like,
Mm.
like, yeah, I don't know. Some of these dudes, like that, say the Hellahans, for example, right? Like, we went and rode 9 acres actually when we went over on that trip, and it was a much different set to what it is now. Like, it's obviously grown a hell of a lot, but you look at those guys riding, you're just like, man, not only do you like go 2 or 3 times higher than I ever would, but you also make it look good and fun. And Hardy was the same, like they
Yeah,
do some
yeah,
awesome tricks and whatever, and you just like, and you make it look good. I'm
for sure.
like,
Yeah, man. It's actually I feel like Jamin was one of those dudes
yeah,
who did that. Like, for people that don't know who Jamin King is, like he's just this Collie, isn't he from Collie?
yeah. Well, yeah, he's from right near Collie, right? So yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, that's where he would have grown up riding is that scene for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was he still over there?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Don't see as much of him. Like we still touch base every now and again. He's probably from where I am. He's probably 2 and a bit hours south. So he's
Yeah.
down near
Okay.
Collie again
Yeah. Yeah.
now. Yeah,
Because I thought
but
at one point he was doing pipeline.
he's one of those dudes that'll just pop up and like, or he built a whole set more or less by himself that was just amazing in the bush, and I don't even know if they ever got ridden. And just like, man,
Mm.
they do workhorse. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. He sent us, Riss and I, a video of him riding that spot that you're talking about,
yeah,
like off its
yeah,
head. Like,
yeah,
it's so sick. To go back to the trail, like a bit more. Not that we haven't been talking about trails for the last however long, but when you went over to on your trip most recently to the States and
yeah.
even your trip to Europe and stuff, were there actual trail spots that you liked the best, and then was there stuff that you wanted to bring over to your spot?
There's a hell of a lot of influence, that's for
Mm.
sure. Like from all the spots we went. So I suppose in the most recent trip, the spots that we visited, Posh and Caddy, 9 acres, and Hazelwood.
Oh, cool.
Right now, Hazelwood and like Tom from Hazelwood, I'd consider a pretty close friend. He was obviously over here for the last jam as well.
Yep.
And Hazelwood was like on a whole nother level, and it's actually pretty cool. We've been seeing a fair bit of Hazelwood's been getting a fair bit of attention lately, it seems,
Mm.
on social media and everything. There's been some pretty cool people go through there, and that was a step up. Posh and Caddy were amazing. Hazelwood was like, man, like blind jumps, big. Like I can understand why it wasn't as popular. It's because it's fucking big and scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had
Yeah,
I don't know who it was that was saying it, but they were like, yeah, you need a full week just to try and get through the line. Like it's
well, yes and no. It depends. Like, I mean, we had a couple of dudes like Matt Bell from here. He got through pretty quickly, sort of thing. Like if you
mm,
would, yeah, for me, I would need a full week there. I didn't have a full week. I don't even think I dropped in on anything big. Like it was, we were there only for a short period of time, sort of thing. But just watching these dudes like Potosny and that ride, it was just like, fuck, man. Doyle was there, like, and you're just like, man, it's a whole nother level. And same with
Mm.
Fushka there, man. Like,
Oh yeah, that dude is
and
fucking
of course,
animal.
when you're right, when you're watching people who go three times higher than you really should go, it makes it even more intimidating.
Yeah, yeah,
You're like, man, do I have to do that? Do I? I don't even know if I can go that high. Like,
yeah.
actually, Pi from England was there as well.
Oh,
Like,
cool.
yeah, there was some. It was actually a pretty cool little sessions that were there. But yeah, look, I mean, they work well, right? They're
Mm.
just kind of scary. They're kind of like It seemed like most of the jumps were blind. Like you'd take off from the lip and you wouldn't know where the landing is until you're already taken off the lip. But
Yeah.
fast, big, you know, and there's a 32, 33 foot, I think, skipper, and
Wow.
just watching it and Bush comes through and flips it like mid sort of thing. You're just like, man, that's ridiculous. Like,
Dude.
I'm quite happy just to sit and watch sessions like that
Yeah,
rather than
yeah.
get involved. As I said, I'm not, I don't consider myself to be a really good rider, so I'm quite happy just to watch them.
Oh man, Fushka's one of those names that not if you know, like you know, but he's a
Yeah,
fucking animal. He's such a
yeah.
good rider.
Any of those Belgium dudes, man, they're scary as to be in a train with as well because they're so vocal. They're talking and it's always doing it, or you're gonna crash it. Red Belgium's the same, man. You're just like,
Yeah, yeah, for
fuck.
sure. Um, when I was last there in 2020, you had that left berm, and then into a long on a left hip. But it looks like you've got quite a bit, like in the top section. Sorry.
Yeah, yep. Yeah.
Um, it looks like you've been working pretty hard to keep going down the hill since then.
Yeah, so I suppose from then there's a couple and they get bigger towards the bottom there sort of thing. We've actually had one jump that we've more or less built last winter that we never rode this summer. Not that we have any intention on hitting that 30-foot mark or anything, but I'd say this one would be pretty close to that. We
Yeah,
just
well,
probably just need to man up, finish slapping the lip and actually ride it.
yeah, well,
But yeah, definitely going down the hill. That's getting pretty big. And then we kind of there's a new set that wasn't there at the time that it's pretty. I suppose it's probably the most popular set. We almost come back up the hill and we had the intention of building that small line that I was talking about to try and get people involved. And again, it just ended up being three of us digging for the whole winter by ourselves.
yeah, okay,
Nobody who wanted these lines came up and helped. So we built. I'd still consider it a small line, right? It was a very easy line, should I say? But we need something that's a bit smaller again for the beginners. But yeah, we also built that. We spent a bit of time on that this year as well, extending that line. So I'd say that'd be the sort of line that's the one that stays untapped or gets ridden every session, and then the stuff down the bottom will untap when it's not just two of us riding it.
yeah, okay, yeah,
Big job, to
yeah.
untap and to
Oh
water a
yeah,
whole line of
yeah.
two
Once you,
people.
that's right. What? So you're saying it's mainly you and Glenn Hamilton?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, Glenn's as much part of HVT as I am, sort of thing. He's been there since day dot, and and I think always will be, sort of thing. In fact, he's probably moved more dirt at HVT than I have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
In fact, I'd almost say comfortably he has. Oh no, I would have, but I've moved more with a bobcat or an excavator.
Yeah,
He's probably the same amount with a shovel. So
yeah, crazy.
yeah, so Glenn's definitely the main dude. Hugo's been there for the last 2 years, last two digging seasons, sort of thing.
Hmm.
He's probably the other one. And then look, we've got a smattering of other dudes that are, I'd call them locals and regulars, but between having kids, Seb's one of them, right? So Seb lives over an hour away. He's
Yeah,
got a young kid now as well, but he's still pretty regular up there, or whenever he can come up, sort of thing. He's still up. Even he's sometimes come up, only spent an hour at the trail, so he's driven for an hour to spend an hour there to go back for it.
yeah, yeah. Far out. Yeah, I get what you. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There- There's another dude, Jack, who's from New Zealand. He's recently moved over here, so
oh, cool.
from NZ with his missus. So she's a Perth girl. So he's been up a fair bit, and sort of he's becoming one of the more regulars. Just recently made it into the exclusive trails chat that we have. So
That's sick. Yeah,
yeah,
that's good, man.
but other than that, yeah, it's we'll say it's three of us, and then the odd bit of help here and there, sort of thing. Riding
Mm.
season's a different story, as it always is.
Oh
You know, there's
yeah,
always,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. It's funny. It it was actually really cool when I spoke to Jay Ham, and he
Yep.
was sort of saying that he has this. I don't know if you heard it, but he was sort of like, there's dudes that are not digging as much, but they're always down to help when there's like the riding season is upon. At least they're like down to help. But then he actually doesn't like the dudes that are like these fake trail dudes that
Yeah.
kind of don't.
Yeah.
I just think that it was a really interesting perspective. It was a lot more open minded, I thought, like, because he's saying like, look, there's dudes that don't spend the winter at the trails, but they're always down to make it happen.
Yeah. And we've got a bit of that as well, I suppose. Like it's fun. Everyone says, "I'll come and help in the winter," like I'm keen, sort of thing. The classic is, "Let me know when you're digging." I'll
Yeah.
just respond, and it's like every weekend. Like, like if a day is a Saturday or a Sunday, we're going to be here digging on the weekend. Like so, but and then obviously you don't see anyone during the winter. But a long time ago, man, and I'm not. I wouldn't say that we're particularly salty or that kind of group. Like, you can get salty if you want, but at the end of the day, it's not going to stop what we're doing. We're still going to be out there digging. It would be cool to see more progression in the winter if you had more people digging, like, and you'd see it progress quicker. But at the end of the day, man, I'm happy to dig and build, and then if people come up and ride and they enjoy it, then happy days, And I think I actually think back to one of those things that Doc Chock said in your podcast, that people who build the trails themselves probably get more fulfillment or more enjoyment out of it because they've built it, as opposed to someone who just turns up and rides. Like,
dude, yeah, 100%, yeah, exactly. So
my biggest frustration with it is, I'll dig all winter. Like, I have not, other than going for a ride with my kid on the balance bike, like, and me just riding alongside him on the flat, I haven't ridden my bike or done a jump since probably May.
Yeah,
April,
wow.
May, sort of thing. All it is, like, because I don't go out, right? And that's my own fault. But I've just been digging and that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the start of the season, I get on the bike and I feel like I'm having to learn how to ride again.
Yeah.
I've got those hell unco funky, and then you get someone who rides trails, doesn't come and help dig, but you see them riding bowls and skate parks and all these other sorts of things all through winter. They come in and they're absolutely shredding. And I love watching it, don't get me wrong, it's cool, but I'm just like, man, I wish I was dialed in at the moment. It's going to take me probably a month and a half or 2 months to get dialed back in.
Yeah, get you to the end of the session and then to the end of the season, and then you're fine. Yeah, that's so. It is funny. Yeah. I think I'm a bit. I find that I just decide not to ride. Too much. I guess in terms of like keeping your skills up, but anyway, it is what it is. I think that's the thing. Like with trails, you just can't help it. If you got spare time, that's what you'll spend it on. Is going to trying to ride, build jumps.
And I do it. It's bloody rewarding too. Like now, where we probably could be riding now, but we're just still dialing in the fresh stuff that we've done. Like we're still just doing the final slaps and getting everything ready, sort of thing. And I love this time because all the work that you've done through the winter, like, you're walking around, you've got moon boots with clay stuck on the bottom of them, and it's, sticking to the shovel, and it seems like you're making no progress. And then you get to this time and you're starting to do the prettying up stuff and like doing that finally, you're like, man, that looks sweet. Like, yeah, man, I can't wait to do this. And you're doing all that dialing stuff like that to me is exciting times. And then, and then we'll be getting tires. And we're like I said, we're bloody lucky here. Like in summer, I mean, I say we're lucky because we don't get rain. A bit of rain wouldn't be so bad through summer, but like we just got this long dry spell sort of thing, and we're just lucky that I've got a spring-fed dam and we've got a pump hooked up to it, so we just got hoses everywhere to water the trails. Like it's a little bit luxury sort of thing when there's other people out there filling up watering cans from a creek at the bottom of the line and to water the set, whereas we just ride for half an hour, pull up. Everyone jumps on a hose. You hose everything down in 15 minutes, and then you go and ride for another hour. So,
dude, I don't know if it's obviously it's quite luxurious to be able to have that set up, but mate, you made that happen. Like it was, like you spent the money, you footed the bill for for the property. So
Yeah, yeah,
kudos to
true.
you, man. Like, it's pretty impressive to have built a spot. You've built your life around like a trail. You've made your life facilitated everything into getting this trail spot happening. That's sick.
Yeah, I think that's always just been me. Like, if I'm going to say I'm going to do something, I generally try and follow through with it, sort of thing. And like, I could be one of these people that complains and whinges about not having stuff to ride or trails getting knocked down or whatever. And I was fortunate, right? I was very fortunate. I was in a position where I had work that supported me at a very young age, buying a property, and I was able to do that sort of thing. So, yeah, you're right. You know, I've been lucky to have been in that position to be able to do it, and I'm pretty
Dude, not
proud of
luck
it.
though.
Yeah,
You've fucking worked hard.
yeah, true. Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah,
just got done how you were saying you work 13-hour days minimum. You know what I mean? Away from your family. It sounds like bloody
yeah.
hard
That's
work
fine.
to
Yeah,
me.
okay.
So,
All right, I'll take it, man.
yeah, take it. Take
Worked
the
bloody hard.
You've worked bloody hard to create a fucking trail mecca. It's sick.
Yeah. And hopefully for a long time to come. We're coming up to 15. Actually, it's a funny story. There's a young kid who just last weekend, actually, people talk about HVT, like locals anyway, local kids, and wanting to come up. And I don't know whether they're scared to come up or they're worried about the whole trail salt sort of vibe or whatever. But occasionally you get someone who messages you saying, "Hey man, is there any chance I can come up and ride at the trail," sort of thing. And it's kind of that first message that they send is usually a pretty good indication as to what their intentions are. If they start off by saying, "Can I come up and ride?" You're like, okay, so he just wants to come and ride, right? But we had this one kid the other day who messages saying, "Hey man, I love seeing the progression of these trails. Can I come up and dig?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. This is a different sort of mindset." Anyway, so he's a local kid. He ended up popping around. First time at the trails, didn't bother going to walk through and have a look and all that sort of stuff. He just said, "Is there a shovel I can use to give you a hand?" And I was like, "Oh, geez, we're onto something here. Like, this is, you don't get too many young kids." Anyway, we're talking away, and he's like, because how long have you actually had this spot for? And I said, "Oh, it's coming up to 15 years now." And then Glenn goes to him, "How old are you?" And he goes, "I'm 15. Like, to think that he was born when we started the trail.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
man,
so
I feel old now.
crazy. Holy shit. Wow, dude, that's sick.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah,
that is actually pretty crazy because he's probably literally gone through his childhood being like, wow,
yeah,
look at this place. He's
yeah.
legitimately saying, I love seeing the progression because he's every year it just keeps. That's
See,
crazy, man. That is
yeah.
actually fucking crazy.
I was like, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Um, I won't keep you too much longer because this is one of the 3 days that you got off. But one of the things that I kind of just wanted to ask you, and maybe this will just help for other people, is has there been footage of the trails over time that people can find on the internet or anything like that, or is there any seminal Perth videos that you
Yeah.
think that people should watch? So they can
So, man, I'll be honest. Like, we are probably the worst when it comes to posting on social media or gramming any of that stuff, sort of thing. Like, if you have a look through any of our pages, there's very little fresh stuff on there. Like, we're hopeless with it, and so we're probably our own worst enemy when we say, "Why does no one want to come over and ride with us?" Like, it's because no one knows the place exists. um, but I think you're probably going to find more footage particularly from the early days, on Vimeo rather than YouTube. For some reason,
Mm.
that was a video platform. So I think if you type in HVT or Hidden Valley, particularly if you type in Hidden Valley Trails Jam or HVT Trails Jam, there's a couple of videos made from that pop up. Yeah, Ranch Hand.
Oh yeah, ranch hand. True. There's
The opening section of Ranch Hand. To be honest, that's probably the only true footage of the top set, like what we call the top
yeah,
set.
yeah.
And that was from 2020, right? So
Yeah.
it's not really much else out there. I'll make a commitment. We'll try and post a little bit more this summer coming.
Yeah,
Because
let's just get a little teaser. Like I just want to see
yeah,
if couple of
yeah,
runs through the line of you and Glenn. That's all I
yeah,
need.
elusive Glenn on. You won't get much footage of Glenn unless you do it
I want to
sneakily.
see the hammer time seat grab, the hammer time
Oh
drown
man,
chuck.
so do I. We all do.
Yeah.
He's one of, you wouldn't know it, and then all of a sudden you'll drop in and you're like, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
We'll try and get a little bit more. Actually, it was pretty cool. Like last year, and like we had a fair few visits from Sam Grace.
Oh yeah,
Like,
cool.
man,
Oh, I actually saw him doing a fucking 720 or something. What
yeah,
was it?
just
Something?
fucking just shut down the trails. Like that's another one. Yeah, I'm happy to put the bike away here. Like he's doing flip cliffhangers on what we consider our small set. Like and like again, it's just a different style of riding, and I appreciate it. Like he was doing these flat spin things over that last hip in the big line every single run. It was almost like it was easier for him to do that than what it was just to jump straight. Yeah, I'm just like, man, that would be like if ever I was to do a video part, that would be a banger. If I was ever able to build up the balls to actually do it. But man, and that was cool. Like, yeah, flip whips and 720s and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it was crazy. Like, again, I love seeing that side of things, and he's he's got a different career, well, not career, but idea as to where he wants to go with his BMX sort of thing. And I respect the hell out of that. Yeah. Yeah, he hit us up just recently, actually. I hope to see him get back a few times this summer coming. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's always fun when you get the dudes that are completely outside of that realm.
Yeah.
Coming to the trails, like it's
yeah. I also kind of like we've had a few people come through over the years that are absolute like world class riders who really struggle to get through trails.
Oh
Like,
yeah, right.
and I'm kind of like, yeah, that's right. You might do all that fancy stuff on the street and do a rail that I wouldn't even never dream about sliding down on my butt with, but you can't get through the trails.
Isn't it interesting, man? Like there's some things that people just like to me, I mean, it took me a little while to feel really comfortable with going to a new set of trails. Like, it had kind of tripped me out, like, mentally. But there's dudes that are doing the craziest shit on the street that then you're like, how can you not jump this jump?
Yeah. I could, yeah, it blows me away. There's a few guys like that, like, in fact, I think the last time that Callan and Jake Corliss came up here, both of them said that they were nervous to ride. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're quite happy to go and charge down the biggest rail that's ever been known to man.
Yeah. Like legitimately Callan. Yeah. Although I have seen footage of Callan doing crazy shit at HVT.
Oh man, that's what I mean. Back in that era where we didn't have a set path, yeah, man, absolutely shredding. Like absolutely destroying trails and all those guys. Even Kelvin. I don't know when the last time Kelvin would have ridden a set of trails was, but I remember him being a good rider too.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's classic. Yeah, dude. Well, I think that in terms of like I said, HVT Jam, best jam I've ever been to, for sure, and just all you dudes and the trails and everything that you guys do over there is like massive inspiration, and I think even more so because you're all just living life, being soul riders, like you're just living.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah.
So it's what you guys are doing, even though you don't ever post it on the gram, it doesn't go unnoticed. So I'm super stoked with what you're doing, and just thanks for the inspo, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah, look, hopefully, if anyone who is interested in coming over, don't be afraid to hit us up. We're not too scary, I don't think. So,
do you think you ever do a revival jam?
And I want to do another jam, but I don't know. I think it'll go back to what I first intended the jam to be. To be more of a trails jam for trails riders, and like hopefully now there's a bit more we can try and tee something up where it's like just get a bunch of cool trails riders and not do the big fanfare and all the rest of it. Come over. But if you had 20 or 30 trails riders here, man, that'd be unreal.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Over a week sort of thing.
Yeah. Will Kerr does that really good, I think, where
definitely.
He just keeps it private on the down low. No one really knows about it, and then it just happens. But man, well, I again thank you for everything, and thanks for coming on and spending a bit of your day off with me, man.
Thanks for the chance, man. I hope people don't just look and go, who's this Josh Cernotta guy? And
Nah,
Get
mate.
past the podcast and get a few views.
Nah, dude. Whoever listens to it,
Yeah.
they know it's the real deal. So, nah, man.
Nah, good stuff, man.
Appreciate it, Josh. I'll speak to you
All good,
again.
mate. Thanks.
See you,
Thanks
mate.
for the chat. Cheers.
Bye.